Yeah.
Let's dive in. Let's do it. Welcome back,
Let's do it,
everyone, to the film analysis part of our show that is still here. It still exists. So we watched a film. We watched Tag from 2015, as I mentioned, is J-horror. It is directed by Sion Sono and written by Yusuke Yamada, and it is about a girl's life cascades into chaos as everyone around her suffers a gruesome fate while she becomes less certain of who she is in her once normal life. True. To say the least. It's just so much more than that's happening. I would say that the promotion and advertising for this film is wrong. Just like it just isn't what it is saying is. Like there's like a tagline and there's like tag. It's like if you're it, like you're it or something stupid. It's not. I don't know if I'd ever be able to explain what it is without like explaining everything, because it's a whole conceptual thing where you're trying to like figure out what's going on, and the whole point of it is that you're lost, like you're supposed to be confused, and it has a reveal, and then like, you know, we will enter spoiler territory, and I'll let you know when we get into that. I'm just gonna kind of gloss over what's happening. So this is an incredibly
very violent art.
Yes, it is an incredibly gratuitous film in many aspects. So whether that's regarding the gore and violence towards women specifically, or the over-sexualization and fan service shots of women and girls in it. Sono goes above and beyond to make the viewer uncomfortable in both of those aspects. Like, we chose Tag after seeing the opening scene online and just, like, a video of, like, the craziest... I don't even know what it was. It was this, like, crazy horror scene. And I think it, like, gives Final Destination a run for its money. It's so absurd. And there's a little bit of Final Destination in this film. What happens is it features a bus full of young schoolgirls who are having fun and, ridiculously enough, are having a pillow fight on board, because that's what schoolgirls do on a trip. And they all had pillows in the bus, which is, again, you're not supposed to take any of this seriously. I don't remember the bus
pillows, not real. But I believe you.
They did. They were all playing it. And the quiet and studious protagonist drops her pen because she's, like, writing poems, and someone, like, kind of teased her about it. So she drops her pen and she crawls on the ground to go and get it. And during that time that she's, like, on the ground, a mysterious force rips through the bus, and that results in each and every one of the girls and women who are aboard, besides our protagonist, being graphically sliced in half. Just like the roof is gone. And so are the roof of the women.
Yeah, their bodies are in half now.
That's it now. And then it follows Mitsuko, who is just stumbling her way into this bizarre and surreal experience where you as viewers are just constantly asking, like, what is going on? Just like she is. She's completely confused, and she stumbles into the next scenario and is like, what? And everyone kind of gaslights her, and no one's like, you should see a therapist. And if anyone is feeling like a psychotic break in the same way that Mitsuko did, I really hope that you would get, like, let's get some help, because the odds are you're not in this situation that is very absurd that she was in. I think it, like, the film dichotomously, like, never takes itself seriously, but then always does. Like, it's a big joke, like, the graphic and gore and, like, the over-sexualization, like, all of those are jokes, but then it's also being, like, really serious in its criticism of it. So fan service is, like, immediately relevant and incredibly exaggerated. There's, like, a scene where there's, like, characters laughing, like the girls laughing as, like, the wind is just, like, blowing up their skirts to reveal, like, their pink underwear. Especially, like, it kept happening, and I was like, okay, what are we doing? And that's, like, that specific fan service is a cliche that happens quite often in, like, Japanese media, where there'll be panty shots. And it's actually, you know, just kind of a trope that happens where there's, like, characters who are drawn in manga to always have that, like, angle. That happens also in, like, comic books with superheroes. That is pretty problematic, to the point where, like, Sailor Moon's creator specifically would make it so that they wouldn't have any panty shots. Like, they are always, like, covered in that area, or, like, she tried to avoid those things as a statement because fan service was such a problem. But there's also like ridiculous scenes like the recurring spontaneous pillow fights. Like there's like 3 or 4. And so it's hard to not realize that it's a joke, that the whole existence of those tropes is a joke. For anyone who doesn't know, fan services, it is a material in a work of fiction or in a fictional series which is intentionally added to please the audience, which often includes sexual nature such as nudity. Our friends at Beyond the Bot, Crystal, has a video about fan service in anime if you want to check that out to learn more about what that means, because I will be talking about it a few times. Sono sets out to overindulge in some of horror's and Japanese media's favorite film techniques, which is like gore, mutilation of female bodies, and the over-sexualization of female bodies. I have always been a fan of gore and quite enjoy some of the more absurd films, and have often been a little like desensitized. Like I'd have a steel stomach around it. Eli Roth was one of my favorite directors growing up for quite a while. And although recently I did watch just a clip of Hostel and I was like nauseous. I was like, why did any of us watch this? No one should watch that. But I digress. The gore in this film, like the fan service, is comical in how absurd it is. There's a scene in which teachers just start shooting teen girls with like militaristic machine guns. Like, I would say is pretty, like when we were watching, I was like, this is pretty traumatic like for American students, because that's like having guns in schools is not a fun time. That's a very delicate subject here in America. But over there, it was just like this absurd thing, like over the top, like, battle royale insanity of teachers, and they just like are going crazy. It's absurd. Like there's no like way to think this is supposed to be anything but just shock and awe of like what is happening. And I think the direction taken with the gore and violence is comical, whereas horror can often abuse female bodies to be like edgy and serious. Like I'm looking at you, Last House on the Left, and quite a lot of the other ones. This film leans more towards like Evil Dead and like gushing of blood and absurd scenarios. It even like borrows that like sneaking camera technique from Evil Dead to show like the incoming evil winds that's like slicing these girls in half, and like throughout, like it's always kind of following. That's an Evil Dead cliche. I was just watching Ash versus the Evil Dead, and we were talking about how the camera's always like, sneaking up on them and going through, and it's like really fast. Like it's literally that. And while I absolutely understand and can clearly see the intent in the film's third act, which reveals the thesis statement that really leaves no room for guessing, I still like was questioning at what point we consider it less a critique and instead just another film contributing to the problem, because it like, just by having the fan service and the gratuitous violence against women, you're still another film that has those things, like even if you're being critical of it. But I think when I was watching it, I was thinking of Hideaki Anno's Neon Genesis Evangelion film, which was a direct rebuke and commentary about the fans who thought they owned a specific ending, and how he used the over-sexualization and incredibly uncomfortable scenes with women, like Misato kissing Shinji, which was super uncomfortable, as a way to reflect the disgusting expectations and desires of the anime fan base. So I think Sono is doing that as well. And I don't know, Kat, if you're going to disagree with me on that, but I also think that this film can be seen as a feminist film. And I totally understand the critiques, as we felt it strongly in Invisible Man, and that we question the validity of the film's message when it is created by men to be feminist. But we've also, on the contrary, seen films, what happens when a film made by women can still be catered to the male gaze and flop with Jennifer's Body. And I think that Sono's thoughts are really obvious and intentional, which to me it is like the same thing with like Invisible Man. There was a lot of praise we had for like, he was trying to be intentional about it. It just like could have been stronger if we just had a little more women involved, or just like you pass the torch over. But I do think like there's a strength that can be found in this film. In an article I found on Kat found on Synapse titled Fantasia Fest 2015, Sion Sono plays a riotous game of tag with schoolgirls. Things Get Weird by James Carey. There's a discussion of the lack of men being represented, and when they are in the film, they're seen in a disgustingly negative light. Sono is not kind to men in this film, and Carey goes to say, heading an almost exclusively female cast, Raina Trendle delivers a great central performance as the perpetually pursued Mitsuko, scared out of her wits as her world crumbles around her, yet strong enough to keep surviving against psychotic authority figures, a scary wind, and men. Well, whilst deliberately few and far between in the cast list, men don't come out of this tale particularly well, invariably portrayed either as sexual deviants, deranged control freaks, or quite literally, pigs. And that is true that these girls are powerful as much as they are victimized by the fan service winds. They embrace their sexuality. They use language that's unfit for like a young, respectable woman. Like they're the rebellious type. And eventually they kick butt. Like some of them are like honestly kicking butt. And my reason for choosing this film for this series was because it was so often tagged, get it, as a feminist film. Like it, when you kind of look up feminist horror, this kind of comes up quite often. And with the character Sir, who's titled that because she's surreal, we get to question our reality and find the power to push back. She tells our heroine that the only way to break free from fate is by an act of surprising daring. And it's like those characters are super strong and individual and their own. And also, like, very strong in their sexuality. There's even discussion about virginity and sexual endeavors, like, offhandedly by some groups of girls talking, where they're, like, teasing each other. There's, like, all their skirts are too high. But there's also this idea of, like, that they did that. And, it's hard. It's hard to kind of pick and choose which ones are that. But I do really feel like the girls were the ones who are given names and are given personalities, really were individual and powerful in their own right.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks. Carrie goes on in the article to say, suffice to say, things are not what they seem, and accusations of misogyny are quashed as the refreshingly weird and unpredictable narrative flirts with big philosophical ideas, as much as it revels in the violent deaths of adolescent schoolgirls. Which is true. It does that. I want to say we're going to go into Spoiler Town because we'll talk about what kind of some of the twists that are going to happen. So if you want to, definitely check it out. We watched it for free. Like, it had commercials, but we watched it for free. So you should definitely try it out. And it's super gory. And like I said, it's a lot of violence against women. So if that's like a trigger, definitely avoid it. Like, you could just listen to this and know what it's about. But if you kind of just like campy horror and to be perplexed for an entire film and be like, what are you doing? You never know what's coming. Like, until I tell you what's happening, you would never have seen this coming. So I highly recommend just for an experience, to be honest.
It's definitely like, a ride. Like, you're like, what? And there's a decent amount of body horror if you like body horror. In terms of like, as it keeps going, there are really gross things that are done with the human body that are just like, wow.
Yeah. There's a scene that I was like,
little Matrixy. It's doing a lot. It's doing a lot.
Yeah, there's red and blue
I don't
wire.
not recommend it. I think it was fun. I think I just personally had a hard time watching it in certain parts just because it was very violent. But I still recommend it. It was ridiculous and like a good time.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely recommend. And especially, like, stop here if you don't want to be spoiled because you want to have that same, like, surprise element. Because like I said, you won't know what's going on.
Yeah,
so definitely,
it goes
like, pause.
all sorts of directions.
Pause here, watch it, and then come back and then listen to me kind of try to piece it together what was going on. So in Act 2, we transition from girls running and being traumatized to women straight up murdering other women. So, like, we had Mitsuko, who's, like, all her friends, or not friends, schoolmates, died on this bus. Then she ran and ended up with her friends at this other school where they're, like, you know, going on their own adventures for a minute. And then they're all shot brutally in this like really triggering for American audiences school shooting situation by their Matrix teachers, because now they're in like Matrix outfits. Or does that happen later that they're in the Matrix?
Matrix was later. There's also like a red and blue color situation that was very Matrixy. Obviously, this came out after the Matrix, but also it's like, I don't think the idea is so unique that like, you know, I think they could have come up with it themselves. Like it just doesn't have to come from the Matrix, but it's definitely from our lens of having seen the Matrix and then watching this and then like, oh, okay, I see what's happening.
I think it's safe to say, because I mean, the camera angle is totally an homage to Evil Dead. There's no way, like that's that's a catch, you know, like that's their thing. Like his statement is nod. That, right? Yeah. And the same thing, I think, with the red and the blue and the fact that it is this question of like what our reality is, and the fact that, spoilers, it's all a simulation, is very much they're in the Matrix. And so like seeing them again, like there's no, I think it's totally safe to be like, that was probably what the motivation was. Yeah, absolutely. So after that, we get this transition where this act changes the flow and expectations of the film, and, you know, keeps the audience confused and curious. I was like, where are we now? What are we doing? And it also amped up like the fear, because it was like really confusing, kind of like Twin Peaks, like what is real? Everyone is kind of brushing off some of the intensity of situations. And like body switching, like you're just a different person now. Yeah. It's confusing. So at this point, Mitsuko is now a woman named Kiko, who is about to get married. And her groom is later revealed to be a man with a pig head. So it's not very subtle. But she is stressed as usual because she's put into this situation. And she's ushered into the chapel and is like forced to get ready to marry a man. Which, mind you, up in like in this entire film, we have not seen a single one. And it was like, in the school, it said like girls' school, so I was like, that's fine. But when we became Kiko and we're like running through the city, like this town, I was like, there is not a single man on the street. Like it was all women. There was like women dressed up for them, like to go out. There was women who were working. Like it was like I was like, there is only ladies here. And I like texted Kat that I was like, what's going on? It was like a woman police officer. So it's kind of amps up the stress too, because you're like, who is that? Like, we haven't seen a man. Who would that be? And in amidst of all this stress, she finds comfort in seeing her best friend Aki, who I was hoping when we heard she was getting married that that's who she was going to marry. And I will talk on the queer ideas later. But I was like, oh, she's going to marry Aki. And then was like, no, she's just like her bridesmaid or whatever. And I was like, no. Disagree. But Aki then explains that she knows more than she previously allowed on about what's happening, and instructs Mitsuko/Kiko to murder all the women. And then she shows her how by just like breaking people in half, just like snapping them in this like absurd way. And what follows is like equally absurd action scenes of Kiko and Aki tag teaming and breaking, butchering, and murdering women in the chapel. Like, just, what are you doing? It's really obscene. And that's when we get that introduction to the teachers coming back, and now they're all matrixy. They're, like, in their whole, like, they look like Trinity, like, in the leather. And still got guns, for some reason. In Act 3, Mitsuko becomes Izumi, who is a star track runner who is encouraged by her friends to, like, push forward in this marathon that she's running. And she runs from the would-be assassins of the Matrixy teachers and her pig-headed groom. And during this act, we're told that the women are caught in an internal murder loop because Mitsuko won't die. Because she keeps living, they have to go to a new scenario where they have to keep dying horrifically. And later, our beloved Aki tells her that Mitsuko has to kill Aki in order to escape. And that's when we see the red and the blue wires, which is like, out of all the scenes, that one I closed my eyes. That one I closed my eyes for, because that was some Cronenbergian stuff. And it was so long. It didn't need to last as long as it did. And then, like, what did you say, Kat? You were like, she could just move over so I could see the door behind you. Why did I have to do that? So it is the red and the blue, and she has to do that in order to unlock the door that would lead her out of what is revealed to be a simulation, because she ends up in literally titled Man's World, which is this gloomy, icky, disgusting world where men have been watching and enjoying in their disgusting men way the violence and fan service of the film so far. Mm-hmm. This part has the same energy as Hideaki Anno showing clips of a live audience watching Evangelion along with their hateful graffiti in the letters. Like, it's literally like Sono not so subtly telling us men are trash and the media is often for the male gaze. Like, it was literally like, this whole time I was doing that, but to tell you that it's trash. Like, I was showing you how, like, this is you. Look at this. It's absurd, right? That was stupid.
Yeah,
this
y'all
is stupid
are gross.
that you like.
Get it together.
Yeah, get it together. You're all trash. So that part is like, you know, the big reveal, and there's like exploration of that, and like the men are all greasy and gross, and she's like, things happen, and it's clear, like it is made clear that it's been a simulation that she's used as a tool. Like, she's literally like, you are the object for the male gaze in media. We just keep replicating that, regardless of how you feel. You are nothing but a tool for this. Which is like the whole thing. But now I want to also discuss some of the queer overtones of the film. Because I do feel that Sono had some intention in making Mitsuko queer because of specific scenes. Like, she is seen as different, and she does get quite bashful around her female classmates. Like, not in a way of like, I'm just a nervous, like, sweet girl. Like, it's like, as a fellow queer, I was like, nah, I get it. But the biggest indicator is her very clear love and affection towards her best friend Aki, who in this like emotional, sweet, and not subtle scene tells Mitsuko how much she cares for her, and she says, nobody is as important to me as you. And I was like, they were roommates, you know, like, they're not friends, you know what it is. And my heart was like, babies. And so I was like super excited by that development and just put them into my little ships box. I was like, yep, they're together. And in an article that I really appreciated because it kind of even further expanded that, because when that first happened, I was like, oh, okay. And then it got kind of choppy and it lost me as regarding like queer representation. So on Ray's anime blog, there's an article titled "Violent Japanese Horror Movie Tag as a Strange Surreal Yuri Metaphor." And Ray goes on to explain their personal feelings towards the representation of the queer identity explored through Mitsuko. And just a brief sidebar here to explain what Yuri means. Anyone who doesn't know and doesn't read it often, like myself. It is a genre of Japanese media focusing on intimate relationships between female characters. While lesbianism is a commonly associated theme, the genre is also inclusive of works depicting emotional and spiritual relationships between women that are not necessarily romantic or sexual in nature. It's like actually exploring female relationships like, and not this two-dimensional way that we often see on screen, and not in the shitty, bad way that we saw in Jennifer's Body. Like,
it's been a minute. We forgot we couldn't curse.
We can't do it. Jennifer's Body is not Yuri. You know, fight that. Because their relationship's stupid. But in this, I would venture that is very Yuri. So it can be sexual, and it also is just like how beautiful female relationships can be, where it's focused specifically on them and not men. Like, that doesn't matter. So Rai explains some of the more impactfully queer moments in the film. The part mentioned that stuck with me because I was honestly struggling to find the meaning in women fighting other women in this really graphic way. And I was like, what is the power here? Like, what do we do? What is the point? Because I was genuinely lost. Like, when she's in the chapel and her and Aki are like just killing ladies, I was like, I understand you want to kill the dude, the pig, and you want to kill the teachers, but why do the teachers want to kill us? And that's, the teachers want to kill because they want the girls to behave, right? They want to whatever.
They're a pillar. I'll get into in my section, but it's basically like that they are part of the peace and harmony maintainers of what is expected of normalcy in Japan society.
Yes.
Which usually means making like drone humans, and not because it's capitalism, you know.
Yeah, you know,
we're not people, we're robots. It's fine. No one has emotions or actual like feelings as people. But that's just like, that's my little 2 cents that I'll get into later.
Yay, little teaser. So Ray explains in this blog, the next part one of the strangest yet most significant scenes in the whole movie, Mitsuko/Kiko starts walking down the aisle. The room is filled with women cheering for her. Again, only women. There is not a single man in sight. At first, the women seem happy, but then they begin to insult Mitsuko/Kiko and start pushing her around. Next, something even stranger happens. The women begin to take off their clothes. In their underwear and bras, the women begin to hit Mitsuko/Kiko. It may seem like strange fan service on the surface, but I think it has a deep metaphorical meaning. The women are taunting her. She likes women, she likes the female body, and yet she can never have that kind of relationship. Society won't let her. Which I feel like, yeah, they were being they were literally like the violent fan service. It was like it turning violent. Like, here it is, this is what you want, and we are literally the enemy. We are the embodiments of what fan service is, and we are attacking you. And I think that extra layer that Ray brought is super helpful too, of like, it's also that it's kind of her internalized like fighting of what her desires are, and what society isn't going to let her have. So it's villainizing her desires, right? It's turning them monstrous so that she would be afraid of them and she wouldn't act on them. And I'll admit I'm fuzzy on what Mitsuko's death means exactly. Ray offers that her killing of Aki to enter men's world is a representation of her having to kill her feelings towards Aki to conform, which I'm sure, Kat, you'll talk about kind of that need to conform in your section. But I just feel like Aki wouldn't have asked her to do that when she's been so supportive up until now. Like, for that to be the ending felt weird. Like, why would those women who were running next to her, her supposed friends, push her forward if she was supposed to kill her love? Like, it went from being super supportive and love yourself and believe in yourself to kill what you love to survive or to exit the Matrix. And in the end, Mitsuko stabs herself in order to avoid sleeping with a man. And honestly, same. You know? Like, yeah. I was like, the only way out of this is either you stab him or you stab yourself, right? And there's no... And the whole thing is, like, you're supposed to do something that's, like, spontaneous, right? When she does stab herself, it results in all the other versions of herself stabbing themselves or dying, which breaks the cycle of the girls being murdered for entertainment. But it's like, at what cost? Right? It really makes me question whether this film would fall into the bury your gays trope in film, where, you know, we kill off our gay characters either to kind of show that that was wrong the whole time, or to show that they mean less than our heterosexual characters, or what have you. Like, we just kill them off because whatever, they're expendable that way. I know this is like more of a statement in her dying, but it's like, is her spontaneous act that the men thought she valued her life more than her love, when she didn't. She did value her love enough to prove that by dying for it. And it's like, who really wins there? Or is the overall message, like, that no one in this film can profit from the violence and suppression of women? Like, you kill us and now that's it. Like, we killed ourselves. Like, I guess it's giving her the autonomy by making it her choice. But, like, we should never glorify suicide in any way. And definitely shouldn't kill off queer characters if that's what you're trying to do. It doesn't, like, I just don't feel like killing yourself is the answer to breaking a cycle of violence. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's very fair. And I know that's, like, not, like, it's definitely not like, that, it's not she just killed herself equals that. Like, it's supposed to be something bigger, but I can't get over that that's what her decision was, and that was the spontaneity. Like, I feel like it should, like, and, you know, we're always against, like, murder. Like, we're like, revenge is never the answer of the thing. But in this case, I'm like, you should have just stabbed the dude. You should stab the old man. Why are we stabbing ourselves? Anyway, he made the game. Like, why? I don't know. So that's where I'm like, the ending kind of like put me back a few steps, where it's like, all right, it's not as feminist as I like it to be. And like, again, it falls into that trope, which is really problematic, because this is 2015. We don't need to be killing our gay protagonists. Yeah, a lot's happening in this film, like a lot. And it's saying a lot, yet not. It's confusing. I feel like there's a lot of ways you can interpret what's happening. But I guess, like, we won't ever really have
the answer that I guess we want in that, like, why? What is the thing?
I mean, unless we ask.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if we'll
What
have
are
the
you doing?
opportunity. I don't know if we have I don't know what the word is. The reach. We don't have the reach for that currently. Maybe one day.
If you got a connection to Sono, please let me know.
Yeah, but it's saying a lot. It's most of my observation of it's a lot. A lot is happening. A lot is being felt. A lot of feelings are at play. A lot of things are being played upon. The whole thing is a lot, and that's the consensus that I kind of end with. Yeah.